It's now 5:32.
I'll call to order the King George Service Authority Board of Directors.
Please rise for the invocation by Supervisor Stroud and then stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I knew you all wanted to revisit the CIP. Is that on here? Do you need to amend the agenda to entertain that?
We need to amend the agenda to entertain that.
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to add a rediscussion of the CIP.
Second.
Properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All righty.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I may, where on the agenda would you like the CIP discussion? I guess my suggestion would be right after 09-0H, right before the county administrator's report, if that's okay.
That's fine. Public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please provide your full name and district when submitting your public comment so they can be properly included in the public record. First, we'll go from the sign-in sheet, Reverend Davis.
We thank you and appreciate the opportunity. My name is Reverend Davis, Sherman Davis, and I vote in the Dalton District. And I want to be a blessing to you and lift up the name of the Lord. The scripture says in Genesis chapter 2 and verse number 7, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul, Genesis chapter 2 and verse number 7. There are no vowels in the Hebrew alphabet. So when we say the word Yahweh, we have to add the vowels to be able to pronounce that word. The word in the Old Testament, the Hebrew word, of course, is YHWH. So how do you say YHWH? How do you pronounce YHWH? Well, without vowels. And so the correct way to say, you can't say it with the tongue. You can't pronounce YHWH with the lips. And so the name imitates the natural act of breathing. And so while you inhale and exhale, natural breathing, the YHWH sounds like that. YHWH. And so can you imagine the first word you ever spoke when you came out of your mother's womb? The first word you ever spoke was the personal name of God, YHWH. And the last word you'll ever speak when you leave this world on your deathbed is this name, personal name of God. And you will not leave this world until the name of God no longer fills your lungs. Think about that for a second. The natural name of God. and you'll not leave this world until your lungs, the natural God breathed, the Bible says, into his nostrils the breath of life. I think God has a sense of humor. And the fact that every time an agnostic goes, he's saying the name of God. Every time an atheist breathes, he's saying the personal name of God. I think it also ought to remind us of how important it is when we speak God's name to reverence it. We need to understand that that is a name above every name. The only thing that's above the name of God, he says, exalt his own word above his own name. Now, there's another name. His name is Jesus. Another name is Yeshua. And when you say the name of Yeshua, I say Jesus, his name should be called Jesus. The Bible says every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. God bless you. Thank you for your good work. Appreciate you much. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Level?
Hi, my name is Ana Maria Lobo. I live in Presidential East, and I think I belong to Jane Madison. Well, I want to thank you for your service to the community. But you want to build a preschool for $20 million. Well, my children grew up going to a private preschool. I don't think it's right that you spend $20 million on this when you had two schools that need a lot of work. Or replace. When my children were in the middle school, I requested that they check for more because the ceiling were leaking, but I don't think they ever did. The elementary schools are in terrible shape. They have more mildew, asbestos, and lead paint. Lead paint is one of the big health hazards for children and adults too. Asbestos is a hazard for lung cancer with adults as well as children. I also think that the old school should not be used for training new recruits for the sheriffs or the fire department. About 20 million, where is the money going to come from? The taxpayers or more debt? The previous supervisors built a new library, a new sheriff's department, built a new courthouse, a new high school, put a lot of money into new middle school, and now you want to spend 20 million for preschool, putting a lot of preschools out of business in King George. Preschools like Peace Lutheran, Oakland Church, the YMCA, the Christian school behind the Full Iron, and another preschool by Oakland Church. They have a lot of preschools where the children can go. Thank you. Oh, and I want to say again, we need to pay down the debt, so please reconsider spending this money.
Thank you, Ms. Level. Reverend Shaw?
James Shaw, James Monroe District, columnist for Northern Neck Sentinel. New hat, techno-historian. 41 years ago in 1983, an innovative company called Apple Computers was out to hire a new CEO. Steve Jobs was pitching a reluctant John Sculley, the CEO of Pepsi. Steve Jobs drew a picture in John Sculley's mind of a great noble cause. Steve challenged John to his heart. Quote, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or come with me and change the world?" John Sculley would later describe this question as a punch in the gut. They would work together for a year or two, but their visions would diverge. Jobs would be fired. Sculley eventually would be fired. Apple would be so desperate that they would hire Steve Jobs back 14 years later. Jobs wanted a fresh approach in 1997, and so he brought back the PR firm that put them on the map in the early years, but was kicked to the curb 10 years prior. A redemption opportunity. And so I would have presented the video in question here, narrated by Richard Dreyfuss, but unfortunately I missed the deadline, so you will hear it next time. And so, with the challenges that face you and the county and of King George, we ask God to bless you all of everybody's efforts, the people that are obviously seen and the people behind the scenes. May the King George County Renaissance and all those people who are making it reality work together. We're not done yet. We've only just begun to think differently.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to make public comment? Seeing none, Mr. Dines, is there anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Has anyone received any written correspondence? Alrighty, we will close public comment. Reports of the members of the board. Mr. Stroud?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody who came out and spoke tonight. Mr. Sullins and I received an email asking that the bridge on Frederick's Chapel Road be looked at by VDOT. And Mr. Sullins sent an email to Mr. Beal asking him to check it out. So thank you, sir. I'd also like to request an update. Miss Linda Williams, the Board of Directors President for Presidential Lakes, and Mr. Bill Norris sent a letter back in March talking about the failed septic systems in Presidential Lakes. There's 2 septic systems that have failed over there, and they're looking for some sort of remediation. And I called them and spoke to them, and they stated that both Stafford and Spotsy had approved a new system, some kind of new alternative system, and they said that they had brought it up to King George. And I realize this is new, that we've got a lot of new people in there, but so they may not be aware of it yet. But they said that King George is kicking the can, basically not doing anything. And I expressed them and said that that's not the case. We just had been short of people, got a new staff, and we'll work on it. And they brought up that there's an old well that's owned by the county inside Presidential Lakes, and that they had actually sent an email to Miss Bender, and she's aware of it. But the county needs to do something about the well that's over there. The Service Authority, there's an old well and it's coming apart. The fence is down. There's rodents, snakes inside the building. It's coming apart. So there's some stuff that the county needs to do to fix that or remediate it. So I just wanted to bring it up to the board's attention. And that's all I've got, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, sir. First and foremost, thanks everyone for coming out and participating in your counting. I'm going to keep it short tonight. Really, we'll be getting weekly reports from our county administrator. That's small, and it's just been good to know that things are in good hands. And I just want to say thank you to all the people that work in our county and things seem to be really coming together and doing a great job. And I just really want to say I appreciate that. From where we started, it seems we've made a lot of progress, and I'm just happy for that. The only thing I do want to make a motion to name Delaney Richards to the Economic Development Authority to finish her term.
Is there a second? Second. Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Thank you, sir. Is that the end of your report, sir? Okay, thank you. Lee?
Good evening, everybody. Appreciate y'all coming out this evening. Pastor Davis, thanks for your words. Always appreciate you coming out. So I don't want to take too much from Ms. Bender because I believe she'll talk about it for the Service Authority in her board report this evening. But we did have the Fat Oils and Grease town hall last Tuesday. There was some good attendance for that. A number of businesses came out. Lots of questions asked, questions answered. It was great to hear from the community. It was very good engagement with the businesses that came out. We did run through some of the software that the county has purchased, and our fog inspector will be going around meeting with all the businesses here shortly. So that was a good town hall. Again, good participation. Appreciate everybody who came out. That's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Sullins.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, everybody, once again for coming out tonight. Thanks for the folks that made public comment. Reverend Davis, I agree. I do think God has a sense of humor, but it's for a much less spiritual reason. If you look at me tomorrow morning, this side of my head will be much more grown out than this side. I don't get that at all. But as far as report goes, we had a town hall meeting a couple weeks ago that had about 15 people show up for, so that was kind of nice. A little bit more colorful than I anticipated, but it was a nice event. During the last few weeks, had some discussions with folks about various boards and committees. Also had some emails about internet access, All Points Broadband versus Breeze Line, and also some the one that Mr. Stroud was talking about on Fletcher Chapel Road with VDOT. There's another, and I am brain farting. I forget what the topic was, but it was another VDOT thing, and I want to throw some kudos to Mr. Bill for jumping on that and getting the information to us quickly. He has not responded to the thing on Fletcher Chapel Road yet, but he's usually pretty quick to respond and very helpful, so I appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge that Miss Bender and I owe an email response to Mr. Trowbridge about the possibility of installing a second meter on folks' house so we can distinguish the difference between water used and sewage services used. He asked us about that a while back, and we still owe that email, so I do apologize for dragging my feet on that one. And then finally, I've got 4 names that I would like to nominate 3 for the EDA and 1 for Parks and Recs. Would you like for me to do them all at once or just individually?
Could you do the EDA, all 3 of those, and then the other?
Yes, sir. So for the EDA, I would like to nominate Mr. Steve Zaremba to fill the term vacated by Becky Gallimore. I would like to nominate James Shaw to fill the term vacated by June Drake, and I'd like to nominate John Windsor to fill the term vacated by Carol Sandrini.
Is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Go ahead, sir. Next one.
And for the Parks and Recs Advisory Committee, I would like to nominate Mr. Alex Fisher.
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Pastor, thank you for coming out tonight. Now it's your problem too.
Ready? Board of Supervisors consent agenda. We will do,
Mr. Collins,
yes, ma'am.
you forgot me.
I certainly did.
And you forgot yourself, too.
Oh, I didn't forget myself. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'll talk more about the Service Authority and Mr. Stroud's question in the Service Authority portion. I do want to mention that I did participate in the Friday tour of the middle school and the preschool with the citizens. I will be creating sort of and it will not be by my town hall, which will be on Thursday, a PowerPoint showing you some of the pictures so that the public can start to see why that building has to be torn down. It is in bad shape. I know some people like to keep everything, but we can't keep everything. And it's sad that it is in that state, but it's eye-opening because I actually have pictures, because I'm sort of the picture historian of the county at this point, of the school when it was still open in 2009, the spring of 2009. And if you look at those pictures I took then and what it looks now, it is a totally different story. And it does show we can do better in the future to make sure that buildings we leave, we make sure that they are occupied soon after and fixed. And that's why I keep bugging about the courthouse when we vacate that later this year for the new courthouse. So that's something coming. I did enjoy talking to some citizens about their experiences going to the school and, that their opinions. And I asked them how they felt about it. And that was good listening and talking to them. It wasn't have a lot of people on Friday. I heard it had a better attendance on Saturday. The next is I want to thank Mr. Smolnick for the tour of the new courthouse and Sheriff Giles. It was good to see the progress and the work that's done. And once again, if you compare the pictures of the courthouse over there with what this new court, you'll understand why a new courthouse was needed. I know a lot of people call it the Taj Mahal and many of the things, but if you put it in perspective, that courthouse over there was built, the original piece, in 1923. And Sheriff Dawes, if I remember, for $20,000. Correct? Vic Mason showed me some of that paperwork before he left. And a lot of other localities have had more than one courthouse in that amount of time. And we've had the same building with a couple additions on it, including a porch that was closed in. And it was created, that's where the Commonwealth's office is now. So if you understand all the requirements that are in a modern courthouse, you can understand why the cost, unfortunately, is as high. COVID happened. But the space needs are for a modern standard courthouse. In 2017, there was a study done by the state on what a courthouse is needed. And if you think of 100%, it was 27% we were at in that building. So it's kind of an eye opener. Could we have done things a little differently to cut down on costs? Yes, probably. Hindsight is 2020. But if you think about it and you see what is required, you can understand somewhat of the scale of the size of the building. So the next thing I would like to mention, I wanted to shout out to Miss Amy Southall. I want to thank her for this budget summary. This is nice. A lot of other localities do this, and a lot of the citizens have asked for it, and she's done a good job putting this together and getting it on the website to try to explain our budget a little better. I also would like to thank Lee for mentioning the FOG Town Hall. I'll be bringing that up in the Service Authority portion. And last but not least, my town hall is on Thursday in this building, 5 to 7. It's Q&A, just coming in and talk and have conversation. And it's on September 5th, 5 to 7 in the boardroom. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Smolnik, we're going to start the budget up process in early September here. Well, can you get us a schedule so we can have a budget much earlier than we did last?
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay, and the next thing, Mr. Smolnik, is the comp plan needs to be updated. Can you give us a schedule on that?
I will. Yes, sir.
Alrighty, thank you. So, I didn't intend to say anything, but some of the chatter makes me want to respond. So I've been on this board, this is the 3rd year, and I've been a resident for a long time. And what I've observed is that we don't do a very good job when it comes to leaving a building. So what happens is we leave a building and it's empty. There was never any talk of what reuse it could be, whether it to be sold or whatever. And so the can gets kicked down the road and then it becomes an unusable building. So the schools, the old middle school is an unusable building. And at one time it was a usable building. So this board has a completely different philosophy than past boards. This board is going to make financial decisions that are based on the needs of the county and their citizens, and that we're not going to be wasting space or wasting money. So you'll see that the program with leaving buildings empty is done at least for 3 years, while the new ones are on here. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out, and we'll move on to consent agenda. I'm going to hold item number 0901 all the way down to 0902.07.
I'll make a motion to approve 0901.001 all the way down on the agenda to 0901.0207.
Is there a second?
I have a question.
Okay. Let's
Second.
let's get a second in there, and now we have discussion. Mr. Brown?
So I saw one of the bills, I was trying to pull it up, was to Sheehy Automotive. And I was wondering what that was for. for like several payments, $300 something to Sheehy Automotive in there.
Okay, what number is that under?
That's what I was trying to pull up. I lost it. 1 second. I'll pull it up again. It's under the capital improvement, which is,
Under capital improvement.
yeah. 02. It's under the 09010202.
So we'll pull that one off for right this second. Ms. Cobb gives opportunity to look at it. So we'll, Ms. Bender, can you amend the motion except for that one?
Which number was that again?
090102.02.
I'll make a motion, amend the agenda to strike 09010202.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, by roll call.
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Stroud?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Alrighty, now we're going to move down from now to 090103, meeting minutes. Your motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 090103 meeting minutes, August 20th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Constitutional officers, 090104. Sheriff? Okay. Yes, sir. Bucket? Okay.
Mr. Collins, can I make a suggestion since we're still trying to find the information? We move to the service authority and then circle back on that after the service authority?
Okay, if I can remember.
I'll remind you. All right, we will move on to the Board of Directors for the Service Authority. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is in the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion properly seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Oh, wait a minute. By roll call. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
PC?
Aye.
Ellie? Aye. Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Our agenda is pretty light today, so I will give a summary of all the many different things we've done in the Service Authority. One thing I want to do, I want to thank the team, and I'm going to call it a team because it is a team, from county staff to Service Authority staff that are making the Service Authority a better, I'm going to say business and a better model. And we had DEQ, I'm wrapping this into DEQ. We had a meeting with DEQ last week. We had, I think it was 10 to 12 members of the Richmond office and the Northern Virginia office. And they were here and we talked to them about the history of the Service Authority. And as many people know in this community, the history of the Service Authority is not pretty. I mean, we've been trying to fix in 8 months what 30 years has done. It's pretty hard to do that. They brought up the many violations we've had and our track record. And a lot of the violations, you don't realize they add up. And a violation could be a nutrient limit that's considered one violation. So we will be receiving a consent order, and that is on a lot of the nutrient limits for Perkins Corner. There will be no, from my understanding, no valuation put on it, no fine, no fee. But what they've asked is that in writing, as part of the consent order, we're showing how we're going to keep Perkins Corner going until we can decommission it, and also a plan in writing of how we are decommissioning Perkins Corner and bringing it to Hop Yard, so that it is in writing in the consent order. It does give the county some protections also being under consent order, but I'm just going to put it out there that we will be receiving a consent order. I think the median, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Smolnick were in that meeting. I would say it was a really positive meeting. They do see finally the Service Authority is trying to correct the bad practices from the past. But they want to make sure that in writing, we're going to keep to it and have a positive path and stick to it. And so that was very transparent in the meeting, and I think it was a great meeting overall. Mr. Stewart, do you have any other, or Mr. Smolnik?
Madam Chair, I would only agree with what you said. They were very receptive to the discussion that we had. They pointed out, I guess, the inadequacies over the past, and they were very impressed with what this team was doing looking forward, and that seemed to be sufficient for them. And I think that's a really, really important thing. They recognize you're making the effort to get this fixed, and things will be running smoothly going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Smolnik, do you want to add anything to that?
I think everything's been said, but it was a very, very fruitful meeting. And I just, want to echo Ms. Bender's comments about, the team effort that's gone into this. Everybody's contributed and been part of this, and it's going definitely in the right direction. So thank you, Ms. Bender.
Thank you very much. And concerning the Fog Town Hall, that is one thing. They were impressed. DEQ does watch our meetings online. A lot of people watch our meetings online, and you can watch the Fog Town Hall online on King George County official content. And basically, we had maybe 4 or 5 restaurants who actually came in. We've heard there's some others have seen the video online. I think the last time I checked it, it's had like 80 views. So it's amazing. And the charts that Emboden created for us that shows the difference that just starting to eliminate the fats, oils, and grease has done to Perkins Corner, especially, and bringing down the nutrient limits, especially the nitrogen, is just truly amazing. And they were very happy, not only with us having Emboden right now running our authority, but also the fog inspector and the numbers that have just shown in the small amount of time. And unfortunately, a couple of the violation letters we received are because before that, we were trying to get a handle on those nutrient levels, but now you can see it's like a huge curve and a huge drop off. So if you watch the video online, you can see the graph that is part of that presentation. And you can also see the lovely picture of Perkins Corner with it before we started implementing the program and how nasty it looked, the fats, oils, and grease. The last thing I wanted to bring up is what Mr. Stroud brought up. I will be honest, we were focusing so much on the fog and the DEQ. I did receive a letter. I do now take that as attention for the property in Presidential Lakes. It is not an easy solution because the belt, we own the property, but it is a well that is there, and we do need to address it. Maybe put it up there for maybe the Presidential Lakes might like to purchase, because right now we don't really have a use for that site, and it's right next to their maintenance facility. So they might be interested in purchasing it for us, but it is a cleanup. That is something that I will put on my agenda for this week, that we need to address that. And the septic part, I will have to look into, because I did not receive that information. I just received a letter about the old site in Presidential Lakes. Mr. Collins.
So I do find it amazing that 20 years of neglect, mismanagement, will be turned around in 8 months. Ms. Level, she's been coming to the meetings for many, many, many years, saying the same thing every single time. And so I commend all the members of the Service Authority for taking the bull by the horns, fixing the problem, and moving forward. Thank you, Ms. Bender.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any thoughts, comments, questions? No? All right, with that being said, I will close my report and we will move on. Thank you, Mr. Collins, for the nice words for the staff. I really appreciate that. But we will move on to the secondary public comment, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. In order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak, please provide your full name and district when submitting your public comment so that it can be properly recorded and included in the public record. Would anybody like to come up and speak in public comment for the Service Authority? Mr. Dines, is there anybody online?
No, Madam Chair.
Has anybody received any correspondence? We've been sitting here. With that, can I have a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion that we adjourn until September 17th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. in the boardroom of the Revercombe building.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion properly seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. The Service Authority Board of Directors meeting is now adjourned. Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Ms. Bender. So did we get an answer on 9010202? Ms. Cobb? Sheriff?
Mr. Chair, those, they were taken for the 5 new vehicles that we purchased through the ARPA grant to get it out of the original budget. And that was a charge for getting the spotlights taken off those vehicles. It was a separate charge. They didn't encompass that in the initial charge of the vehicle. We bought the vehicles for that price, and then the spotlight's taken off, so they charged us an additional $313 or whatever. I'm sorry, $316 5 times up.
So Sheehy bought the vehicles?
We bought them. We bought the vehicles from Sheehy out of the ARPA grant, and with those vehicles came spotlights. We don't need the spotlights on them because of the lighting configuration that we have on there now, so they had to take those lightings off, which was a separate price than the buying the vehicle. The vehicles came with the lights, but we wanted the lights off. So with taking the lights off, that was that charge.
So, thank you, sir. My next, that brings us the question that, is if, and we bought those vehicles, there was like there was a bid that went out on that?
We buy it off the Sheriff's Association contract.
Okay, and the King George dealers aren't on that contract or couldn't
Correct.
participate?
The Virginia Sheriff's Association has a procurement program that kind of like Eva, and they go out and they have a committee that all these vendors for cars goes to, and they throw their pitch into the hat, and then the Sheriff's Association picks these vendors. He was the vendor that won that bid.
Okay.
The association.
That was my other thing I was going is why we didn't use a King George dealer. That would, so I understand.
We've tried to talk to the King George dealers to get them to throw their hat in the ring, and they said it's more of a hassle than it's worth.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. So the item 09010201 was for the 22/7/21/61. These are for the lights for the sheriff. The item that was pulled, that was the item that was pulled. Is that correct? Because I thought I heard a different dollar figure. The next one down the line for 397,000 is for the courthouse. I just want to make sure, with my notes, what I was hearing is
The motion was for 09010202.
and so 02 is for $397,000 issuance of warrant against FY 24-25 capital improvement fund for just shy of $400,000. When you look at the funds, which Sheriff was just talking about, were for the lights that's noted for the item above. What I'm showing is the $397,000 is for branch builds for the courthouse. There are 2 different items there, and then L&M carpet 1. Totaling 397,258.16.
Okay, so 09010201 was approved in the consent agenda.
Yes.
0202 was pulled. It just went through discussion. Now we will
So
have a
it could've
motion.
been, yeah, so
They're labeled wrong.
what if I clicked on the link for the capital improvement plan and pulled up the attachment? That's where I got, it came to and there's a lot, there's a lot of pages in there, but it may have been the one above. So the capital improvement, it would have been under the ARPA funds then. If the ARPA was the page before, because I'm looking at page.
It's tied into the form.
So Mr. Stroud, you were okay with that expenditure?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so all we need to do is vote on the one that we pulled, which was 09010202. So I need a motion for that one.
I'll make a motion to approve 09010202 of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Probably second. Mr. Davis by roll call.
Aye.
Mr. Stroud.
Aye.
Ms. Bender.
Aye.
Mr. Sullins.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay. Zero 0903 Rappahannock Area Community Services Board, performance contract. Mr. Joseph Wickens, Executive Director.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. If I could provide an overview of what this document is, and what our role is in it, and what your role is in it, and so on. Community services boards in general function as the single point of entry into publicly funded mental health, developmental, and substance use disorder services. We're considered the safety net of the community, and the Rappahannock Area Community Service Board helps fulfill this function for anybody living in our service area, which includes the county of King George. We are one of 40 community services boards in the Commonwealth. And this performance contract is the primary accountability and funding mechanism between the state and us. And it's the exact same contract for all 40 community services boards. It's a contract that is renewed and updated every 2 years with a history that goes back decades, if not to the beginning of our existence, which for us is about 54 years ago, providing this service. And even though it's a 2-year contract, which started last year, we're in the amendment cycle, which also requires our localities to approve it, as well as our board, as well as the state before September 30th. And we're in the process of doing that now with each of our localities. Today I have a staff over in Stafford Board of Supervisors doing the same thing. So what I'm presenting you today is a performance contract for your review, for your approval, so that we can continue to receive state-controlled funding, which accounts to about 25% of our total budget, so that we can continue providing the services that we've been providing in this area.
Okay, does any board member have a question for the director? Seeing none, thank you, sir. We will put it on the agenda for action on next item. Thank you. Next, Mr. Smollett. Thanks, sir. 904, award of professional service agreement for property assessment services of real property in King George County. Ms. Cook and Ms. Puckett.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm bringing before you tonight the award of professional services agreement for property assessment services of real property in King George County. Procurement issued an RFP to solicit responses from qualified firms for property reassessment services. 4 proposals were received and reviewed by an evaluation committee of staff members. Staff coordinated interviews with 3 qualified firms and found Wampler Eanes Appraisal Services to be qualified and capable of reevaluating King George County's property values and best serve the citizens of King George County. Recommended action is for authorize the county administrator to execute a professional services agreement with Wampler Eanes Appraisal Group in the amount of $470,911.05, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney. The current budgeted amount in the FY25 operating budget for this project is $380,872. Therefore, staff recommends that the board authorizes a budget supplement from the general fund balance to the Commissioner of Revenue's reassessment services line in the amount of $90,040.
Okay, this is a discussion item. Anybody have a question for Ms. Cook? Stallings?
Ms. Cook, you said you had 4 applicants, but you interviewed 3 of them?
Correct.
And what happened with the 4th one?
We generally narrow down the ones that we feel are most qualified. The 4th one just didn't score as well.
Okay. Did you give them feedback for next time around?
I have not.
Just quick question, because this was very controversial in our last go around. This one, we vetted a little better, I would assume, correct? From my understanding.
Actually, Ms. Puckett could speak to that.
I just want the citizens to hear, because that was very controversial last
Absolutely.
time.
Ms. Puckett, Commissioner of Revenue.
Good
At the
evening.
mic.
Yes, we did exactly that. When we, one of the reasons why the other person wasn't even interviewed, they do more of the eye in the sky kind of thing. And Wampler does boots on the ground. That's their motto. And I believe that's what everybody was looking for. So that was one of the key factors. And they scored very high.
I I appreciate it, and the citizens appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ma'am,
Wait a minute. Mr. Stroud, you,
before she, so
Sorry.
did we look at any previous work that they have done? They provide any previous reports or previous work they have done?
They provided several references, and I called most all of them on each one. They did score the highest.
okay. Sure.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Seeing none. All righty, we will put that on the agenda, Mr. Smolnick.
Thank you.
Ready? 0905, memorandum of understanding for coordination of law enforcement services between the Commissioners of Charles County, Maryland, and the Office of Sheriff of Charles County, Maryland, and the King George County Board of Supervisors and the King George County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Giles.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, tonight I come before you with the kind of a revised MOU between Charles County and King George. The original MOU was signed in July of 1999. A copy of the MOU is filed with the Office of Sheriff, and we also have a copy of it. The MOU remains in effect until it's canceled or revised by one of the chief executive officers of either of the agencies. I approached Charles County and requested to have it revised since Sheriff Dobson's name was on the original document, and there were some wordings that needed to be changed within it. The MOU essentially provides that the King George County Sheriff's Office may make an initial response to emergency needs for police services in those areas of Charles County adjacent to King George County, Virginia. It further provides that the assistance and resources of each agency may be requested and received, one from the other, at the discretion of the providing agency. Follow-up investigations remain the responsibility of the agencies which the original jurisdiction is. Charles County's definition of an emergency, as used in the agreement, may consist of a misdemeanor committed in the presence of the officer, a felony, or any other crimes in progress. What kind of brought this forward was the fact that through a grant process and no monies by the taxpayers, we were able to purchase a boat. There was an establishment up in Fairview Beach that drew a really large crowd that after the establishment closed down for the evening, the boats would turn their bows or their sterns into the shoreline and play their music 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. The residents of the Fairview Beach area, we really didn't have any teeth to bite into that or to help them. With the purchase of this boat, it gives us the ability, it's a law enforcement boat, to get out there and to address that issue. I sat down and went through the MOU that we originally had and still have intact and made some changes, and through the interim county attorney and the Commonwealth's attorney, they had their changes, sent it back to Maryland. They did their changes, went back through the interim county attorney and Commonwealth attorney for their approval on it. They've both read it and approved the changes Charles County had. So now it's my recommendation, my ask is that the board approve it as well. And Mr. Chair, that you can sign it so we can send it back to Charles to be signed.
All right, just Sheriff, if you would you point out to the public, a lot of people don't understand that we border on the Potomac River and we don't own the Potomac River.
Correct.
Could you explain that a little bit?
The low mean tide is where the boundary is for the for Virginia and for Maryland. And because Charles County is an adjacent county to us, they own that portion of the river that would border King George.
And so if I were to jump off the pier at one of these restaurants, there used to be nothing that King George law enforcement could do, correct?
Well, prior to 1999. 1999 to date, we would have the authority to interact, call Charles, have them on their way over while we secure the scene.
Okay. All right. This measure was already approved by the. So does anybody want to bring this into an action item since it's not an item that we? Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding for coordination of law enforcement services between the Commissioners of Charles County, Maryland, the Office of the Sheriff, Charles County, Maryland, and the King George County Board of Supervisors, the King George County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Giles, and the Sheriff's Office.
Ma'am, the MOU you have in front of you, does that have a watermark or draft on it?
I'm just looking at
the. It does.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I have one that does not have that draft. Can I give it to Jackie or somebody?
Yes, you may. Thank you, sir.
Second.
Properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, members.
Already. Transportation Alternative Program Award Acceptance. Board report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As we discussed briefly in the capital improvement plan discussion a month ago, the King George County has been awarded a grant through the Transportation Alternatives Program, which is a VDOT function. They have awarded us $856,458 for our Ready, Set, Go Phase 1 project, which has been a project I've been working on with VDOT, RK&K, and the GWRC transportation planners for almost 2 years now. Our portion, our match for this will be $214,114. And when it comes time to have action, our staff recommends that you accept the Transportation Alternatives Award, authorize the county administrator to create a TAP project fund, authorize the county administrator to transfer the appropriate $214,114, and authorize the county administrator to sign the VDOT administered locally funded project administration agreement. It says subject to approval as to form by the county attorney, but I was informed in our last call that the attorney general has already approved it, so Mr. Stewart doesn't really get any say. Unfortunately, they say it's good. This project will be 400 feet of sidewalk from King George Middle School to the intersection of Kings Highway and Dahlgren Road, and also accompanying crosswalk and signal upgrades. So the crosswalks will go from the middle school corner to Sheets and to the Fastmart property, and then from Sheets across the Sheets entrance. So all of that will greatly serve our high school and middle school students who cross there frequently to get meals and other things at Sheets in between school and practice. Any questions?
Yes, I have questions.
Hold on a minute.
So on that,
Oh, just a second, Mr. Stroud. So what's the amount?
Our commitment is for $214,114.
Okay, so first we need to have a motion, Ms. Bender.
Well, hold on one second. I do want to point out Chip Boyles from GWRC is in the audience too, if we have any questions. I just
Right,
want to.
so this is, money's coming from the CIP. It was already appropriated, so we need to have a reconsideration motion. Was there a reconsideration motion?
Mr. Chairman, I think we said the CIP discussion, if you want to table this Mr. Clark's discussion, I think we said the CIP discussion would be after 0908. So if you want to put Mr. Clark on pause, we know the dollar amount, I can include that in my CIP presentation and move on with the agenda.
Okay, is there a motion to table this until we have a reconsideration?
Make a motion that we table it so we can reconsider it later.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I do want some discussion.
Okay. All those in favor, table it until we get to the next.
Hold on.
I think she's asking for discussion now.
I just want to make sure that Mr. Stroud and everybody can ask questions so that we don't.
There will be time for questions for sure.
Okay.
But, so the CIP was already appropriated, so we can't do this as an action item at this time until we have a reconsideration of the CIP if we want to put this in that. So that's why I requested a reconsideration motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
We will do that. Already? Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You voted to reconsider.
Hold on, I just want to clarify.
Okay,
I asked for discussion, but we didn't actually vote.
that's correct.
So-
Mr. Chairman,
So let's just back this off a little bit. So this is putting the cart before the horse. So we really can't talk about that item until we have a reconsideration motion. The motion was made, it was properly seconded, and you want to?
I just want to make sure we vote on to table it, to put it in the right. I just want to make sure we do it correctly.
Okay, so it was seconded. There was no discussion on the reconsideration. Now we're waiting on the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
There was aye. 907, tourism sponsorship grant program, Ms. Southall. We're going to talk about it when Mr. Smolnick comes up, and then we're going to, on the CIP. It's not being, you just got to do this in a proper order.
Good evening, members of the board. As Mr. Dines pulls up the presentation, I am here to discuss the update at the request of the board and the Tourism Advisory Committee to the tourism, which previously known as a grant application. We're kind of reframing it as a sponsorship grant application or sponsorship grant program. And essentially, this is all the updates that we talked about in the May 15th joint meeting with the Tourism Advisory Committee with the Board of Supervisors. And so the new process will have a $10,000 maximum for the grants, and then it will support new or expanding tourism projects only. Sponsorships will be on a step process, as you can see in that chart. So if somebody applies and it's their first year for a new initiative, or if it's the first year of an expanding initiative, they would receive up to 80% of funds up front. And then once they supply us with all the proper documentation, they would then be awarded the additional 20%. That would be the same for the second year. And then the third year, it would go down to 70-30, the fourth year, 60-40, and the fifth year, 50-50. And then Mr. Dines, if you'd go, thank you. The after action report would be due 30 days of completion of the initiative. And that would be through approval of staff and Mr. Smolnick for approval that all of the things in the boxes are checked and they would get their additional funds. Any initiatives that are not new to the application process, that means either they've been 5 years through the application process, that would mean that they would then be considered only for a sponsorship package only. That means they would have to have an existing sponsorship package. So this is traditional for events where they will have, hey, do you want to be a sponsor? We'll throw you on all of our advertising. Those typically range from $250 to $1,500. And those would be considered only if there are funds left over in the line item for the sponsorship grant program. Applications would be due April 1st of each year, and then they would be reviewed by the Tourism Advisory Committee during April with a deliberation of what they would recommend to the Board of Supervisors in May. Then I would come to you all in June with what the Tourism Advisory Committee recommends for the fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year. And then you guys would deliberate and vote on what you approve for that fiscal year. And then after all of the applications have gone through for that fiscal year, I will come the next year in May and give you guys an overarching report on all the results that we got from everything that we applied, that we gave funds to for the prior year. A little confusing in timeline, but I hope that made sense. The next section, Mr. Dines, we didn't make any changes to the applicant information. And then the next section, all of this is live on the website with a link in the board report. Full operating budget is now required in the application. You must either provide proof of insurance or accept liability upon award. We do have a clawback clause is notified twice in the application process. Mr. Dines, move forward. No changes to the next section about marketing information. The next slide. After report, like I said, it would be due 30 days of the initiative to be considered for additional funds that they were awarded. And then this was something that was brought up. If there's any purchase of equipment, it would become county property at that time. Reports will be vetted by staff for completion to help make the process be a little bit more smoother so there wouldn't be so many questions from the Tourism Advisory Committee as well as the board. And then one, like I said, after the complete, they'll come to the committee for questions, and then they'll go to the board for recommendations, and then I'll do everything at the end of the year to give you guys a review of how everything went. The next section, county support may be provided for special event permit applications. This is something that was brought up, that we wanted to ensure that events were being as safe as possible with having inspections done through building inspections and community development on tents and entertainment equipment, things like that. Applications for this new cycle, since we're changing over, will be open in January. We'll work with applicants to make sure that they understand the new process. Again, they'll be in April 1st. And then applications for grant sponsorship will be considered once per year. If additional funds are available, as existing events requesting funds would need to have an existing sponsorship package to be considered. Same thing we just talked about. And then we did provide checklists now to make sure that applicants would be successful. So they have an application checklist of everything they need to provide. And then also to receive their additional funds, they have a checklist of everything they would need to provide. So they can reference those. And then again, clawback clause listed again, the agreement to provide information to receive funding. This is their electronic signature. And then the last slide should be additional info. There was a request. We have an online application that was already implemented last year, and so we're continuing with that. Then we will also have an online after report that was at the request of the Tourism Advisory Committee, so that people can upload all of those different things and make it easier for them to know that they need to submit each item. And then this has already been, there is an assumption of liability form that we're still working on that will be added to the application, but that was, we received from our risk management team in finance. So we're just rewording that, and we'll upload that for you guys, and it'll obviously go through Mr. Stewart for review, but he did already review the entire application and approved it. And then we will obviously reach out to previous applicants and notify them of the changes and help them through the process. That's it. So it's open to questions.
All righty. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Southall? Mr. Davis.
What quantifies equipment? You said that they buy equipment. I mean, are we talking like, is there a dollar amount attached to that, or what is it?
So in years past, it's been informed to me that there was an example of some cones, and they have changed ownership and been tossed around throughout the county and other surrounding counties, but it was bought from county funds. And so that was the example that we wanted to hone in on. Obviously, you guys have the ability to say yes or no, grand scheme of things, case by case basis of what those items might be, but that was the example that kind of provision was made off of. But that is up to you guys to deliberate and decide on.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullins?
Actually, yeah, thank you. I've got two questions. One to follow on to that. Who has the authority to make the decision on whether we can give that back? You talk about the case by case basis. Who has the authority to do that?
To get the
if we purchase, if we purchase equipment, who has the authority to decide whether it can be given back to the applicant?
For the applicant, that would be the board. The board can decide on a case-by-case basis. I think that the reason we put it in there is just have it as a default that the county would own it. And then if you guys decide that it's something that you would want to give, you could easily just waive that. You guys have the authority. So.
Yeah, I thought that was the case. I just wanted to make sure it was on record, just because we've got a lot of generous people. The other question I want to ask you is at the top, you talked about the $10,000 maximum. I want to make sure I understand that correctly. So, and you've also got an approach to encourage applicants to start getting their own sponsorships. So does that mean that we're not going to be giving Jazz in the Country and similar organizations $25,000 to $30,000 a year with no change from year to year to year?
With this current process, there will be more checks and balances to help make events be more self-sufficient.
Like it. Thank you, buddy.
All right, Ms. Bender?
Southall, I just want to thank you. I know in my time as county administrator, when you got your new position, this is one of the things you honed in on, and I appreciate your work and your staff's work at updating this and making it a little much better. And so we do not have some groups asking for funds for 5 years straight, that there is a process to make them self-sufficient, and more people get a chance to utilize these funds for tourism. So I really appreciate your staff and yourself for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none? All right. Thank you, Ms. Southall.
If I may ask one clarifying question to the process that's not in the presentation, but I want you guys to think about it and maybe discuss, is the part about the additional funds for applications that may not be new. If there are additional funds, do you want that to go before you guys, or do you want that to be a staff decision for regular sponsorships that are like under a couple $1,000? That's something that I would like direction from the board if that would be okay.
Mr. Smolik, you have some input?
My suggestion is I'll work with Ms. Southall over the next couple of weeks, maybe put together a couple of proposals for the Board of Supervisors. We'll have this in a packet. But I think it's a good topic to discuss, but let's maybe put some proposals. I'll work with Ms. Southall, get that back to the board for consideration.
All right. Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Southall?
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you. 908, goods and service agreement for scoreboard installation at King George Middle School. Ms. Dillard.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Tonight I bring before you a report to award a goods and service agreement for the scoreboard installation at King George Middle School. I would like for you to authorize the county administrator to take the following actions. Execute a goods and service agreement with Brooks Appliance Repair, LLC, in the amount of $17,900 for installation of 2 varsity scoreboards on the baseball and softball fields at King George Middle School, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney. On April 22nd, 2024, procurement received 1 invitation for bid from an offerer with a bid higher than the amount approved by the Board of Supervisors for fiscal year 23-24 CIP projects. After negotiation meetings with the offerer and adjusting the scope of work, giving the offerer an opportunity to revise the original bid, unfortunately, the revised bid was still substantially high. The selection committee and the procurement team all agreed the bid was unreasonable and issued no award. The selection committee, consisting of Gary Cliff, Bryce Young, and Dean Hoagland, along with procurement, revisited the invitation for bid, made a few revisions, and issued a revised invitation for bid with a closing date of July 31st, 2024 at 2 p.m. Procurement received 1 bid from Brooks Appliance Repair, LLC, in the amount of $17,900. After a brief meeting and a request for information by the selection committee, it was unanimous to seek approval from the board to award the King George Middle School scoreboard installation to Brooks Appliance Repair, LLC. The Board of Supervisors approved $52,000 for this capital improvement project at the July 11, 2023 meeting. The total project cost to install the scoreboards will not exceed the approved amount and will result in a savings for the county. And I had attached some of the bids for your review.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Dillard? Stroud?
I would like to say thank you very much for working this, and you guys show the board, and we're working to do a better job for the county, and you guys are working hard to meet those expectations, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All righty. So we will put it on the agenda for action.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. We will go to the county administrator's report. Oh, CIP. That's it.
Mr. Chairman, first thing I would like to say is I disagree with Mr. Clark. I know the Attorney General. I like him. He's a friend of mine, and he's a good lawyer, but I still suggest you have the county attorney review any documents that you're going to sign. Secondly, if you all want to revisit the CIP, you need to make a motion to reconsider passage of the last meeting where you adopted and I believe appropriated the funds for the CIP program. So that motion is a simple one. It is just someone who voted for it needs to make the motion, having voted on the prevailing side, by which the motion approving and allocating the CIP program at the last meeting was approved. I move to reconsider that vote.
I'll do that. I will make a move to reconsider my vote on the CAP as Mr. Stewart stated.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Is this a roll call? No.
Not yet.
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Okay, now we'll go back to the Transportation Alternative Program Award.
So, Mr. Chairman, the CIP, and then Mr. Clark, if you want me, I can talk about this. So the CIP that was regionally reconsidered, this item that Mr. Clark has was listed in the CIP as a Trailways Feasibility Study Implementation, Staff Priority Future, PC Priority 8, Board of Supervisors Approval Priority 7. There was $250,000 allocated in that request. It did not score very well. After the CIP was presented at the Board of Supervisors, August, I think it was August 6th was when it was initially presented. Chatted with Mr. Clark, and whenever the TAP award came out for the improvements mentioned by Mr. Clark, it was indicated that there is a match to that. Now, there is a little bit of history here. October of 22, the Board of Supervisors approved staff to apply for the grant itself. And then there was a resolution approved by the board, unanimous approval, September 19th, 2023, for the resolution of support for the TAP application. The process, I guess the project before you right now is a match of that TAP grant totaling $214,114. That's why there was a request to reconsider the 24-25 CIP allocation. It is to include the match that Mr. Clark came to me to discuss for this particular project. If there's any specific details the board has, but in a nutshell, that's, I think, how we got to where we are for the extra $214,000, $114,000.
All right, now we can have some questions. Mr. Stroud?
Thank you, sir. Looking at that map that was provided, the purple line, it's in there. I don't know if you could bring that up. You guys have that. It was attached to the board report agenda.
It'd be in the PowerPoint presentation, Chris.
Sure.
Actually, it might be in the sidewalk sheet too. I think that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
So what happens? What does that purple line there mean? The solid, it says it. What does that solid purple line mean?
The purple line is the right of way that VDOT owns. And so the majority, this entire project, Chris, if you scroll down, bring the bottom up, there you go. So the sidewalk is shown there in the grayish white where it crosses the tree above the yellow writing and then comes across the entrance there and follows down to the corner. So VDOT only needs, everything else, all that portion at the bottom is in their right of way. So we're good to go there, which reduces our right of way costs and having to acquire anything. And the rest of the property, the rest of the sidewalk is on school property. And that school building, unless I am mistaken, is owned by the school board. So we'll be, between myself and VDOT, get through to them that they will relinquish that right of way for us to put that in. But that's all. That's what it is.
Okay, so where that purple line, if you along Route 3 there where used 2 tires is?
Yes.
Okay, so right in there right in there is going to be a sidewalk?
No, the sidewalk is the gray that goes north up from the corner.
Across the road?
Well, the gray across the road are where the 3 sidewalks will be.
Right.
It's the backward C. And then it's a light gray line that goes up from the corner parallel to Dahlgren Road.
Right.
And then just off the screen makes a right turn.
Okay, so nothing's happening there in front of used two tires in
No,
those
that,
residences?
no, right. At this point, phase one is just to get this 400 feet of sidewalk in and the crosswalk upgrades. When we come, hopefully, or have the ability to come back with phase two with a smart scale project or something, some other project of that sort, then we'll be looking to go up and down Route 3.
Okay, but, okay. Now, I've had some discussion that with the owner of used two tires, you know, he's got some concerns, so that'll be a phase two matter that we need to probably have a discussion with him about, but.
And this is a VDOT provided map, so I can't speak to the accuracy of the right-of-way lines, but they did provide this slide.
Okay, great, thank you, sir.
Is there any other questions? Mr. Smolnik, my question is that when this was presented to the board, can you check back in the minutes to see if there was a matching grant? I don't recall it having a matching amount.
Well, while he looks for that, I did come up with another question, sir. With that new sidewalk, is there gonna be any changes to the lights? Like a way for them to signal a crosswalk for them to?
So currently there are cross signals there, at least to go across Route 3. I don't know that there's one to go across to the Fastmark property. But the discussion of the upgrades would be that the stop bars would be moved back to increase visibility for the walkers. The current crosswalk is an outline where they're, up and down lines. It will become a ladder crosswalk. So it will be more visible to both pedestrians and to motorists. And the signals, the proper ramping will be put in. There was some ramping put in different locations, I believe here, and then in front of the Citizen Center like 4 years ago. I don't know where they came from. All of a sudden, VDOT was out, a contractor was out there, and they made these beautiful corners and put up these beautiful signal lights, and there's no sidewalks that connect them to anything. So that's part of where this whole process, when we get, through phase 4, we could have a sidewalk or shared use path essentially from Presidential Lakes to the YMCA.
So you have a question, Ms. Bender?
Well, just want to point out, I mean, I'm on GWRC, and so was Mr. Solms, but this was before his time. It is always understood that these grants do have a match from the locality.
Well, so what I recall is said, okay, apply for the grant, but I don't recall anybody mentioning that there was a match. So this is the first, there's 4 phases. So if this is $240-some thousand match, so the whole thing all the way down will be a total of $1 million match?
No, the reason why we separated out this phase and made it as short as we did was because the initial phase that was originally proposed was a $4 million project.
So, Mr. Smolnik, we will until I get the answer to that question, we can still put it on the agenda for next time. But can I get an answer to my question, please?
So your question is, you want the specific minutes talking about the grant, the match for the grant, correct?
All right.
Mr. Collins, I have one thing. Is this time sensitive?
We must enter into the agreement by January 1st of 2025. If for some reason we do not enter into the agreement, we will be on the hook for all pre-scoping activities that VDOT has already performed. So they have already done initial survey work and things like that.
Right. I just wanted to clarify so we knew, and from my understanding with the other projects we've talked to VDOT about, if we turn it down, our application in Smart Scale doesn't get a high score, just unfortunately, because we turned them down. So just something to think about.
So when we get these grant applications, we need to have full disclosure of what we're on the hook for if we decide for the grant. So I don't recall that, and he's going to get an answer. We will move on from here.
Sir, I have it right here.
Mr. Clark, you want to, if this is not time sensitive, I suggest we adhere to the chair and you know, I'll bring this back to the chair and the board at another meeting.
Okay, it is in the resolution that I submitted for the agenda packet. I just don't know for sure that it's in.
Okay, thank you. All righty. You ready for your report, sir?
Yes, sir. So just a couple items. I think Ms. Bender's touched on a couple. Talked to Dr. Jesse Boyd with the old pre-K middle school tours, about 15 people on Friday, 25 on Saturday. The overall, and there were some people there who were just looking to see their old school again, but the overall sentiment was that old middle school needs to be tore down. And I think, you know, it sounds like Ms. Bender's got some, maybe some additional photos, but the overall consensus of those individuals, it is in disrepair. So that's the feedback that Dr. Boyd received. And I know I've talked to some of the people who are on the tours, and that's the overall sentiment. Good news, county investments. So we received an email from our treasurer, Mr. Randy Jones, and he's executed a wire transfer for $10 million that should have posted today at close of business into the county's LGIP account. Right now, the interest rate on LGIP is 5.4%. So you run $10 million at 5.4%. That's a good chunk of interest we're earning every month now. I presented you a couple months ago a proposal, and with a 20% liquidity cushion, there was about excess $20 million. 10 million of it was recently transferred into LGIP, so that is good. We are going to start, you know, using our money to earn some interest. That's some pretty significant interest at those rates. The next item on my agenda is for Community Development Department. You know, we have a couple weeks into our seasoned staff members here. They're transitioning quite well. The motion that I have before the board, we have Mr. Kenny Vaughn. He is a certified zoning official. Now, right now, I'm the appointed zoning administrator, and I'm okay to keep that for maybe another month or so until Mr. Vaughn and Ms. Leduc get comfortable with the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance for the zoning administrator and subdivision agent respectively. However, I would make a motion to have the board appoint Mr. Kenny Vaughn to be the signatory authority for building permits, new business licenses, zoning certificates, and other similar type applications in the Community Development Department. Currently, I'm going down there maybe 2-3 times a day to sign these. Mr. Vaughn's been reviewing these for decades, and just looking if that's the will of the board to have him sign off on this for the development process.
Is there a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Kenny Vaughn be the signatory for the building permits.
Ready?
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay.
And one last thing, I did want to echo the 2024-25 budget summary that Ms. Southall created. She worked really hard on this, and this is really for transparency for the citizens. We want to show the citizens how we're organized, what our responsibilities are, and how we spend their money, the taxpayer money. So Ms. Southall put this together. We shipped it out to all the department heads. The feedback was just wonderful from all the department heads and constitutional officers. So this will live on the county's website, again, to increase transparency on the actions of this board and the actions of staff. So Ms. Southall, thank you for your hard work on this. And Mr. Chairman, that's all I have on my report.
Already, may I ask, so it's come to my attention that most of the water rescues are in the Fairview Beach area. And they used to have the boat at the Fairview Beach Rescue. Now it's up at Company 1. They have to take it all the way down there. And that's basically where they put in anywhere on the Potomac for rescue. So could you check and see if we can't get a boat closer so it would be less response time?
I've got a meeting coming up this week with Chief Moody, and I'll work with him on that to get it at Station 2. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Smolnick? Mr. Davis?
I have a question, not from Mr. Smarty, but for our attorney.
Is our attorney ready to answer questions?
No, this is quick. We talked, it's been, a month or so ago about restructuring things for those people that are like throwing up the little 5, 6 house developments and not having to pay anything into the proffers. Have we taken care of that?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Davis, we were given the new community development folks a little bit of time to get into their office, and then I think Mr. Smolnik and I and the two new folks are going to work together to come up with some proposed amendments for you all to get right at that problem. But they just got here, and I can tell you they're drinking from a fire hose.
I knew that they were. I just wanted to see where, if it was still on our radar.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Davis, as a follow-up with that, so two things that I'm going to task these two new individuals with is a relook at our zoning ordinance. I know one of after this was recently adopted, there are some issues, maybe some flaws and some inconsistencies in the zoning ordinance and in the subdivision ordinance. I guess my question for you, Mr. Davis, and members of the board, looking at the subdivision, maybe the 5, 6 units at a time, that's one component. We can look at that individually. Whereas what I've done previously in other localities, it's opened the entire ordinance up to the development world and work with them to identify, 8, 10, 15 different priorities, write a position paper, come back to the Board of Supervisors with a series of amendments. Now that will take a longer process. So I guess I wanted some direction from the board. Would you like us to focus on just because I know we have a comp plan amendment also, Chair Collins requested me to get a timeline on the comp plan, which is also community development. Would you like me to focus on just these lots, the 6, 7 subdivision, or would you like me to roll it into the overall process of looking at the zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, knowing that may be a longer process? What's your priority?
What's the board's interest in this?
Well, what the longer process? What's the time frame on the longer process?
I've done this before, and it's going to be a solid 6 to 8 months. I want to do it right. When I've done it in other localities, that's how long it's taken to really get the feedback from the development world. And then by the time you draft those, you get the feedback from the staff, initiating resolution at the board, planning commission, public hearings, maybe 1 or 2 meetings there, and then ultimately the Board of Supervisors for text amendments. That's really what you're looking at.
That sounds like a good time frame to me.
So I would like to maybe offer something out, because there are issues that come to community development, and some of them, like it's like you get more frequently. Like, what are the problems? What are the major quantity of issues? What are the issues that are more frequent, and maybe look at those? In other words, if there are challenges, that if it's subdivisions and more the problems are with subdivisions, and be able to address them. And so if we can resolve them and reduce the number of issues, then we're reducing the work and the hours that are required to it, and that helps ourselves. In other words, it slows the bleeding, and then we can get to the breathing. It's a little different look at what was just brought up.
Right. So what I'm hearing, Mr. Stroud, you want really you triage the ordinances and see if there's some low hanging fruits that are really causing some holdups in the development world, eating up a lot of staff's time. See if we can focus on those, knock them out. See if there's some easy early wins.
Yes, sir.
And then focus on everything
longer term. We need to
approach.
Yes, sir. We need to address that, but that is a huge it's a huge undertaking. I mean, 6 to 8 months is being conservative, I think, especially when you're still breathing or drinking from a fire hose. So it took a long time just to get that the revisions and get it published, and I think we knew at that time that there were issues with it. Some people knew, and because it's a big document, and I don't know if all the supervisors have had the chance or if have read it, but it's a read. So to be able to go through that is going to be a challenge for them if they haven't. And it's a challenge for the people who are working it now daily to address and try to do a rewrite. And you're gonna see things anyway. In other words, like next month, there's gonna be some new challenges that come to it. So because it's still relatively new, so I think if you could look at it from a low hanging fruit and address it that way, get some big wins up front with the subdivision. With the intent from my point would be helping get businesses, operational. Is there things that are stopping getting businesses into the county that we can move barriers to that, then try to target those things.
Okay, so, Ms. Bender, you have something before we?
Yes, I'm listening to all those things. One of the things, I did read the original comp plan twice, and I know this one once. And one of the big things was to make sure that we did everything in one process, so we weren't doing it piecemeal like that was done in the past. All over the place, scattershot when an idea came up, and then it didn't mesh with the rest of the chapter on different things. So I just want to make sure that we don't do things scattershot. I understand where Mr. Stroud is coming from, but I want to make sure that the chapters stay intact, that we make the changes and don't do things scattershot with, just correcting because it's a challenge right now and not making sure everything flows together and the ordinance makes sense is where I'm coming from.
So, Ms. Bender, you and I were the only ones here when the Berkeley group shoved these ordinances down our throat. I had 180 comments that never got heard. And so they just pushed it on. So I agree with Mr. Stroud that it's some immediate wins. Double check, make sure it doesn't conflict with any of the other ordinances, and also actually take the 6 to 8 month approach to revisit some of these items. Mr. Stroud, when he was just an ordinary citizen, came and spoke about the ordinances, and there was, if I recall, there were at least 10 of them that I agreed with him, were in conflict with the, well, the state, but the county wishes of how people want the county to be. So I wasn't a fan of the Berkeley group. Ms. Bender, I think that you weren't either, but that's my opinion, you weren't. And so do you think that you could do both of those things at the same time? Just say yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I help the county administrator? So one of the things that I think we've identified, and Matt and I and the new community development folks talked about it last week, it's something that I've been looking at in other jurisdictions. One of the biggest problems they have down there is they have to continuously review the same project and send back for comments. And it's frustrating to them because, as far as I know, they're not engineers, and they're getting documents from engineers, and engineers aren't putting things in the document that they should be, and they're looking for them to find it and send it back to the engineers, and the engineers charge for another review. So what I've been trying to figure out how to do is to come up with a checklist that the engineer has to submit with a plan that identifies each provision in the ordinance and where they've complied with the ordinance in that document that they're sending to community development, which I think will cut their review time down dramatically. We haven't had time to work on that yet because, again, we've all been doing a lot. That's your immediate win. And then I think Mr. Davis and others were really looking at by right development, which is all we've seen in the county, and they're not paying any proffers. One of the biggest issues you've had as a result of the new ordinance is it shut down cluster developments. And there are several developers who are very unhappy about that because of the new requirements in the new ordinances. They are not able to develop what I call these little they'll find a ridge with two gullies on each side, and they take advantage of the cluster development ordinance in the past to develop land which, may or may should not have been developed with 30 homes on it. And that's part of their frustration, so Mr. Stroud understands. We're looking at all that to bring it back to you. There may be things you don't want to change that actually they got right in this overhaul, but then there are other things that I think need to be changed to protect the county and the citizens, because right now the only thing you're getting is by right development, and they're generating the need for more schools, for more rescue personnel, for more sheriff's office personnel and others, but they're not contributing in the form of proffers, and so it's putting it on the existing citizens, existing taxpayers. And that's sort of the thing that I've been looking at too, trying to figure out how to get there.
So, Mr. Smolnik, you and I had a conversation in regards to this, that you were going to work on, in your free time, these things where developers come in and this is what you got if you want to come here. It's a set of guidelines. So we will not be on the hook for schools and sheriff and water lines and everything else.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So right now, what we've identified in the community development department is we need to back up, not maybe 2, but maybe 3 or 4 steps. We need to get the basic fundamentals in place first. I mean, we are talking right now of totally revising how plans come in across that front counter, and then working with that staff to, if it's not complete, it goes back to the developer, it goes back to the engineer and their truck, and that does not come back to the county until such time that it is complete, with fees paid up front. We've seen fees come in on the 5th application. Now, this is a liability on the county standpoint, and it has been with my look at this department, because how many hours are invested in reviewing a plan, one of them is a very large development plan that probably has a couple hundred hours in it already. And when we have fees coming in on the 5th submittal, that just doesn't make sense. We need fees up front to come in to cover the cost, staff's time. And when I say we need to go back maybe 3 or 4 or 5 steps, again, it's the way plans come in. We need to make sure that process is solid, how it's transmitted out to the agencies. And Ms. Leduc and Mr. Vaughn are working with the staff to identify where they see the needs, that they can dedicate 50 hours a week to work on this. So I caution you of saying, well, let's focus on comp plan, let's focus on these amendments, let's do this. I want to get the building blocks in place first to have the process, because really whenever that gets cleaned up, you have building permits that come in, somebody putting solar panels on their house. Instead of sitting here for 2 months, that gets turned around in 2 days. So while it's not an easy, that's an early win in my book. Let's cut down the review time from months to days. And I think that process is an easy win. And then once we're comfortable with that process, then I think we go ahead and move to a comp plan update with a schedule, or some major overhaul of the zoning, which maybe the next step is a few low-hanging fruits. But I want to cut down that time that people are sitting here waiting for their plans to be reviewed or a permit to be approved.
That's what I was referring to, sir. And it wasn't necessarily low-hanging fruit, may not be the right word. If there's low-hanging fruit, that's fine. But I'm talking about attacking things like the permitting process. So right now you got a stack of papers, automating it. So it can't go to the next step until it's complete, or that the fees have been paid and been received before that happens. But get those things in place and reduce the work on the staff, but expedite the permitting process. Don't slow down the people that are ready to go. Don't slow down the people that are submitting good plans, waiting on your staff's working on people who aren't submitting good plans. Let's reward the people who are doing a good job in there, instead of their plans being retarded or waiting on your staff spending time on the people who aren't doing a good job. So I'm agreeing with you.
So with all that in mind, I still want to make sure that we consider the cost of every rooftop and make sure that we don't get on the hook like we have been in the past. I don't know if that gives all the marching orders in what direction, but
So I know we had mentioned, and I want to talk about, a cash proffer policy. This is what we're talking about. What a rooftop costs the county.
yes.
So I will work on soliciting information for some rough proposals. My guess is that we'll have to go out for an RFP due to the dollar value that I'm guessing under state procurement laws. But I will start, knocking on some doors and picking up the phone and getting some. But my guts tell me this will have to go through the RFP process. But I will have that information. I will get that, bring that back to the board.
So just to follow up for Ms. Bender, so to put that out for RFP, and then you have a schedule of fees, that RFP would pay for itself in short order.
I believe it will, yes, sir.
Ms. Bender?
Yes, Mr. Collins, thank you. And I've mentioned this in the past, is having set numbers that we can give out to everyone to show exactly what you're talking about. How much does a rooftop cost? The fire and rescue, the sheriff's office, parks and rec, the schools. We have never had a set amount. We always get it from the developer. And so we need to have one that the county has, that the county paid for, that has the best numbers that are for the county, not for the developer.
All righty. You're all ready to close this item?
Now, just one short comment. Just to be clear, my concerns are not concerns, but what I'm addressing is separate from what Mr. Davis is separate. He's looking at developments, rooftops. I'm focused on businesses. So the rooftops bring more cost to the county. I'm focusing on bringing money into the county. I want to bring businesses that are increased revenue, reduce the tax burden on the citizens, and let the businesses pick that up.
So I think that was pretty clear. There's definitely several different avenues on this. Mr. Smolnik, is that clear as mud?
Understood, yes, sir.
Okay. So so there was a lot of discussion. So can we hear what you heard?
So what I heard, and maybe what I recommended is, let's back up 5 steps, get the basic processes down in community development, starting at the front counter. Some of the items that I need to look at and bring back to the board or work on a proposal for a cash proffer policy. Look at a potential for the cluster provision or something along those lines to look at these by right subdivisions. I heard Mr. Stroud say we need to look at and identify key provisions in the zoning ordinance that may be keeping businesses from either locating here or opening in a timely manner. And I believe that was it, Chairman.
That sounds, yes, sir, Mr. Sullins.
Along with that, can we explore the feasibility of incentivizing businesses to come here by giving them a more favorable tax rate for at least for maybe the first or second year while they're here, and then once they're on their feet, bounded by time, like I say, 1 to 2 years, then they go to what the normal tax rate is for businesses in the county?
So that is something that I'm working on, and thank you, board members, for appointing EDA board members tonight. That is my number one project that we're already currently working on with the EDA is totally revising the small business grant program. So yes, we are utilizing that. And it's typically what I'm going to be recommending is a period of 3 years, 0 liability. The county will not lose a dime with this process. It's all performance based, and it's only payable once a business is open and they get their percentage of their taxes. After they pay all their taxes to the county, a portion, I'm proposing either 25, 35, or 45% based on their investment paid back on anniversaries 1, 2, and 3 of operation. So no money up front, but rather performance based and metrics that they have to meet before receiving a refund of their taxes.
All right, well, we'll have to put that part under some discussion. But we're going to go ahead and close this matter.
I got one last item, sir. I know I want to go home, but it's so early, you know. I talked to almost everyone on the board, and I talked to our county attorney. I talked to yourself about the possibility of, with Ralph Bunch, have we looked into that, being able to use that facility for such a thing as the preschool?
So yes, and I believe the conversations were had, but the topic that came up was looking at Ralph Bunch School. I know there's some groups out there who have a vision for it. Is there a possibility to commingle? This is a structure owned by the county, possibly utilize this for a museum to talk about our history and to show that, but then also to educate our future. So I know, Mr. Davis, you and I spoke, and I need to get the keys to get over there to look at the facility. I have not laid eyes on it yet, but that may be a good opportunity to utilize a structure for two different uses. Mr. Davis, it sounds like you've had some conversations with your board members. I can get the keys, and if you have not been in the Ralph Bunch School, as I have not been, I'll be more than happy to organize a group to go over there and look at it and throw some ideas around.
You had an opportunity to speak with the Ralph Bunch folks?
I think it'd be a great opportunity to meet with them and the board of supervisors at the same time to see the visions, see their vision, try to understand their vision, and try to understand what we're doing as a county and what you're doing as a board of supervisors.
You're right. And the way that I'm looking at it is, the people of Ralph Bunch, they're looking at like $10 million to refurbish that building. And they want to do it as a museum and like a community center and after school type program. And you have a daycare, and we have a preschool, out there. We have a preschool that is open, 5 days a week, and they close like 1 o'clock. So you have plenty of time after school for people to come in and use it for a community center, after school program, all the things you want to do. And I look at it as like a way to honor the future honor the past by educating the future. So we bring life back to a building that's sitting there, and people are going to go to museums during the summer, on government holidays, when no one's going to be in the school anyway, on weekends, things of that nature. It's not going to be a year-round tourist item, most likely. But it's just a way that everyone knows a building thrives when there's people in it and life gets back brought into it. So it's a way to for them to kind of get what they want, which they want, about $10 million. It's hard for me to ask the taxpaying dollars from our citizens to do that, when we could also take and say, well, we wouldn't need the whole facility, but we could also utilize it to deal with some of the kids that we need to educate.
Hey, sir, I'm not sure that.
I'll recognize you, Mr. Stroud. Go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you for recognizing me. I'm not sure that anybody actually told everybody what that idea is. So we're talking about it, but that everybody understands what you're actually talking about, using the school, because there's talk about in a resolution for a vote for a preschool and a middle school and so forth. So what your proposal actually that you talked to us about is, so everybody else understands what it is, sir.
Well, that was the main gist of it, but it's, instead of us building a $22 million preschool or building a $57 million elementary school, you got to kind of build where you are right now. And it'd be great to have those things, but when we build a $57 million elementary school, we're forgetting the fact that it's ongoing. You're going to staff that school from here on out, and if you build it, they will come. And looking at some of the numbers that we've gotten from people from the school system, it's not growing from what I've seen as fast as what some people are. As a matter of fact, the school that we don't talk about, Potomac, is the only one that really, really grew. There is some growth here, but in the community, I've talked to a lot of people who really want to see Ralph Bunch get completed and get done. And so it could be something, and it should be. It's a great property. But if it's something that we can utilize it but also use a portion of it to educate kids today, and at the same time, they're going to be in this building, they're going to be learning history, and then, it could still be used to do all the other things we want to do. And I look at it as, the people in our history is being honored, and we're taking care of one of our properties, but we're also honoring our future, which is our kids, which we have to pass debt on to, and they have to pay for these things down the line. And we're also honoring the kids that are coming in there right now that can be taught and have a good facility to do so in. So I don't know if it's feasible for us to do it, but I think it's worth us looking into and seeing if we can take care of Ralph Bunch and take care of, some of our most needed kids who need that education portion as opposed to taking it away from them.
Ms. Bender?
Yes, I hear Mr. Davison. There's only one concern I have, and we need to bring what's left. These board of supervisors approved a committee that had 2 supervisors on it. I'm the only one left. Ms. Kupka was also the other supervisor on the committee. There was a bunch of community members that were appointed to the committee by board vote. A lot of those have left the committee for many different reasons. And they had come up with a plan, and there's some MOUs that are currently, one is with the Ralph Bunch Alumni Association, the other one is with Jermon Bushrod. So I don't know how that vision conflicts with other vision, and maybe we need to bring Ms. Jordan and others that are affiliated with Ralph Bunch and Mr. Bushrod here to have a conversation, because I think there's some MOUs in place already that might sort of contradict with that. And so I would like further study. It's a great idea, but there are some agreements. Mr. Collins and I were on the board at that time that we entered into that might be in conflict. So that might be something ask the county administrator and the county attorney to look into.
So would the board be interested in having a work session with the Ralph Bunch Association and give Mr. Smolek a chance to go there and check it out for the work session so we can come up with a plan together?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying already. We have to do our due diligence to see if it's even possible. So that's what I'm addressing them. So that's exactly what I'm saying. Is it even possible? Number one, it's registered as a historical property. So can we modify that building in any way? Because in a preschool, they're going to have bathrooms in every classroom. There's things that have to take place. So can we do it? That's exactly what I'm asking about. If it's a possibility.
Okay. So at this point, you're going to go check it out, probably at night after the meeting, and then get back with us. And if we need a work session, you will arrange that with the Ralph Bunch. And please, Mr. Davis, he's spearheading this, so please keep him up front in the. Of course, you will let us all know, but this is his project.
Well, it's in my district, and I'm still on that committee, so.
You didn't come up with the idea.
I came up with many ideas, but I didn't get the votes from
Mr. Chair,
the
Mr.
committee.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn till Tuesday, September 17th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. in the boardroom of the Rivercombe Building.
So I need to have one more secondary public comment. And then,
Okay.
Entertain your motion. Secondary public comments to address meeting battered minutes. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please provide your full name and district when submitting your public comment so they can be properly included in the record. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment? Seeing none, Mr. Dines, anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Supervisors adjourn to Tuesday, September 17th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. in the boardroom of the Rivercombe Building.
Second.
Properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any discussion?